All right, so last week we talked about rally officers and running rallies on enemy towers, enemy bases. This week we're going to be talking about garrison. It's not exactly a flip flop of last week. There are particularly some things you should be aware of when you're running your garrison. Now, we probably have a lot of people who run traditional garrisons with, for example, at this point in time, Zoya and Julia, mixed unit types. We're going to be looking into the math of what makes a garrison strong or weak and how to keep yourself from being zeroed, especially when you're going against uh, a rally that's far stronger than your base. And can everybody hear me? I don't know. This might using this. Okay, perfect. People can hear me. Now, I do apologize. I only have my phone for this, so I'm going to be doing a little bit of explanation. I can't really draw on the screen for this, so I'll have that fixed by next time. Let me go into the game real quick, and you should all be able to see my screen. Is that the case? Perfect. All right, so let's start with talking about how a rally, how a garrison is set up. So I have my garrison officers, the weapons on them, the dog on them, the ship on it. That's all going to be in my defense center. I can set it up here. And if I go to the shield icon, it's going to show what my base defense is set to. Obviously, this base defense is not good. So we're going to make some changes to this base defense. We're going to start with the officers. If I go to my officers, I don't have any real garrison officers. I'm an all tank base, so I'm going to set it up for tank. If you're normally a garrison, you can set it up for garrison with garrison officers. I've set my currently active plan 1. So you see it says currently active plan 1. It says that right above my senior officer. I click on the eye, it gives me a little bit of information about that. You can read that on your own. At the top, I'm going to set my best warship and my best dog for garrison. And then when I hit the back button and I hit save, it is saved for me. What happens when I pull that garrison march out? Normally, if it's right after reset, it's going to say, hey, you're pulling your garrison officer out. Are you sure you want to do that? And I have to say yes or no. Then I can tell it not to remind me again, which everybody, of course, tells it, don't remind me about this because that's an extra click. What did it go to now? It went to my second best officer's ship and dog when I pulled my primary garrison out. If I go in here, you'll see that it has plan 1, plan 2, plan 3 I can set. You'll see that there's a check mark on plan 2. It has switched to plan 2 because plan 1 is no longer good. If I were to change this, and we're going to use NAT. So I'm going to use NAT as my secondary and save it. It says, are you sure you want to save this? Yes, I do. Just by changing it in the plan, because it was set on 2, it has now changed it in my defense center. And so instead of going to my second strongest garrison, as soon as I pull my garrison out, it is going to revert to my plan 2, not to your second strongest garrison. That's where plan 1, plan 2, and plan 3 come into effect. Now, that's how it works on a base. On a tower, it works differently. So, anybody in 371 online, let's go to the government area. I want everybody who's online in 371, go ahead and send a march into the government. Okay? Oh, well, I'm far away, so I'm going to teleport up over there. There's a spot. All right, I'm going to send a march to garrison the government. It's going to be hard to garrison Bisky. Here comes Athena. Now, right now, if I check the reinforcements, you can see all these marches heading there. I'm going to watch Athena enter. So Athena was the first march to enter. We'll give it a second. And then it looks like Hitch and Ram kind of at the same time, but then it was Hitch and Ram. I am now going to enter the garrison. All right. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 marches in this garrison, and Athena is the leader. That was the first march that entered. I'm going to swap myself to the lead. Now I am the lead in this garrison. You'll see Ram SRT 10 is right below me in the garrison, right? And Athena is at the bottom because I have switched from Athena being the lead to myself being the lead. So it has put Athena in the bottom. What happens if I pull my march out? Oh, it now moved it to Ram SRT 10. Even though Athena was the first march that entered, it didn't revert to Athena because I switched from Athena being the lead to myself being the lead. So now it moves her to the back. It moves Athena to the back of the line, that march. If I kick Ram, guess who's going to be the next garrison lead? It's going to be Hitch. So I kicked Ram. Now Hitch is the lead. If I kick Hitch, it's going to be 50 cal. This is extremely important when you're setting your tower garrisons, because if the lead officer were to leave, for example, from a deportation, it is going to go to the next march that entered that garrison, not to the strongest garrison. If I swapped the lead that was already a strong garrison to a stronger garrison, it moved the old garrison lead to the back of the line. A lot of people don't realize it does that. So when I'm setting my garrison on a tower, I typically don't set the garrison to defend a tower until that tower is on fire. Then we do not put the fire out, because if it's on fire, it can't be attacked. I am now going to get my strongest garrison lead. I'm going to move that into the tower. I then want to get my second strongest garrison lead and have them be the second march that enters that tower. That way, if they deport the primary garrison lead, or somebody recalls the primary garrison lead, it will switch to the second strongest garrison lead. Does that make sense? Right. Good point, Hitch. So when I'm setting garrison leads in a tower, a primary and a secondary, I want to make sure that those bases are not close enough together that a single deportation can deport both of them. That's very important to remember. All right. So we talked about how the building garrison leads worked for base and for towers slash uh, cities or gates. Let's talk about what makes a garrison strong. So confidentiality level is going to play a part in that. Um, and the amount of troops you have on base plays a part of that. Another thing that plays a part on that is skins. And skins are going to be extremely important even for lower spenders. So let's look at an example of that. All right, so here is a battle report. It's not a garrison report, but it doesn't really matter because it's just we're looking at our troop boosts. So when I'm looking at troop boosts, I see infantry, tank destroyer, artillery for attack, defense, and health. These are not the boosts I'm looking at. I want to scroll down until I get to appearance. Now, my appearance buffs or boosts, those are based on my skins primarily, also medals and other odds and ends. You'll notice that while I have boosts for all three types of infantry, tank, and tank destroyer, I have far better boosts for tanks. And that means that any tank in this march, or in general in my base, for garrison, in rally, in marches on the field, are going to get better appearance buffs if they're tanks. So the more of tanks I have, the stronger it's going to be than if I use a different type of unit. This is very important for your base garrison. If you're a single unit type of base, then all of your skins you're going to want to gear towards that type of unit. If you're a multi-troop type base, I still want to gear most of my troops towards the type of troop that has the strongest appearance buffs. So I might be running a Zoya Julia garrison, but even if I was, I would get more bang for my buck with the more tanks I put on that base. And that's just for me. That's what my boosts are geared towards. So if I have a third of each type of unit on my base, so I'm 1/3 infantry, 1/3 tank destroyer, and 1/3 tank, and I increase my tank attack by 1%, how much would my garrison tank attack go up? It's going to go up 1/3, not 1%, a third of a percent. But if all of my troops were tanks and I had one infantry unit and one tank destroyer unit in my base, just one single one, and then I got a 1% tank attack increase, my total tank attack would go up arguably 1%. So the makeup of the units inside of your garrison should not always be 1/3 of each if I'm going to get better boosts off of a particular type of unit. Does that make sense to everybody? Now, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't make troops of different types if you're a generalized garrison player. But just note that, for example, if you look at my artillery stats for appearance, they're pretty low. So I would never want to use speed ups on artillery, right? Because I don't want those. I'd rather have a different type of unit. All right, hold on. I got a couple questions in the chat. All right, so I'm going to start with Dirk. Dirk said, so you want more units of the type that has the strongest appearance boosts? Yes. I'm still going to make, if I'm using a generalized garrison, I'm still going to make troops of artillery, tank destroyer, and tank, just like normal. But I'm probably going to use my speed ups for troop training on whichever troop type has the strongest appearance buff. That will make my garrison a little bit stronger than if I was running evenly a third on each. All right. Would you still, Jix or Gix asked, would you still consider your one unit type for garrison when that unit type's attack isn't very high? Uh, so if I was running a one single type of unit base, I probably wouldn't use generalized garrison officers. I would use whatever that unit type's strongest officer is. Um, because I'm going to get the most bang for my buck on stats, and it's going to be better than most generalized garrison officers. So tank officers, um, if they're the newest tank officers and it's all tanks on base, that's going to be a stronger defense than uh, generic garrison officers on your base. It doesn't seem like, but it those officers no longer need garrison stats because they're not running three different types of troops on the base. If it's only running that single type of troop, then garrison stats aren't really necessary, if that makes sense. Because my base just becomes one giant tank march. Oh, attack. Oh, you're talking about the attack bonus being lower than my defense. Attack is worthless. Attack in this game is a joke. It doesn't make sense for the equation itself. Um, Defense, way more important than attack. Health, way more important than defense. Um, a good way to explain that is, um, let's say that you and I are evenly matched and we're fighting one on one. And so I've got to march out, you've got to march out, and we're attacking each other. And then I'm going to add a 10% damage increase boost to myself. So I'm going to deal 10% more damage. Now, I deal 100 damage to you, you deal 100 damage to me, but I'm going to increase mine by 10%. I now deal 110 damage to you. But you're going to get a 10% increase in damage received. So you take 10% less damage. You're going to take 10% less damage of the 110 that I'm dealing to you. So now you only take 99 damage. Now you're still dealing 100 damage to me, but you technically are now beating me in damage because you increased your defensive capabilities the same amount I increased my attack capabilities. Does that make sense? So taking less damage in general is way more effective in this game than dealing more damage for the average player. Now that flip flops once you start to get into whale territory. When you get into whale territory, damage dealt becomes far more important. Generally, because they already have all those buffs. They have a whole bunch of buffs, so they're already much stronger than most players. So all they're worried about is dealing damage to the enemy as fast as possible. That's also if you're a secondary fighter. So if you're not one of the primary fighters, you're no longer worried about defense because you're not tanking most of the damage. You're trying to jump in from the side and deal more damage and help the real uh, field fighters, the strongest field fighters out. So you should be gearing up towards as the highest damage you can deal and coming in from the side because that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. All right, going back to Garrison. It would be a good idea at this point. Um, Hold on one second. My phone timed out. Can y'all still hear me? Okay, good. All right. So we talked a little bit about how stats, like where I should gear towards in unit type with Garrison. We talked about single unit type garrisons versus multiple unit type garrisons, entering a building and garrison leads. We talked about that. Now we're going to talk about what happens when you get locked down. All right. So right now, I have 6.9 million troops on base. And my garage capacity, why is health more important than defense? Sorry. I'll get to that in a minute, hockey. Uh, oh, my bad. Okay. Let me try to reshare. All right. Can you see my screen now? Really? Oh, this is weird. Huh. So when I go to share screen, why won't it let me do that? It did earlier, right? Well, if I can't share my screen, this is going to be a little pointless. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Let's all switch over to normal voice channel real quick so I can share my screen. Sorry about that, guys. Um, I'm going to be talking about bio, so my garage capacity is going to go up, and I would say it's somewhere around 800,000 and something in bio. But I have too many units on my base to empty my base. So and I'm just going to pop an expansion. So I'm going to use the 60% March expansion. And so that's the highest expansion we can use right now. And if I pull my troops off of base, yeah, there we go. Do. All right, so I just pulled 6 marches off base real quick. On base, I've now gone down to 4 million units on my base. That's going to be way over the 800,000 uh, garage capacity I would probably have in bio. So, if I get locked down, I can't empty my base. So if there's a rally that can beat me, that means I'm going to lose 4.1 minus 8 million, 4.1 million units minus 800,000 units ish in the garage. That's going to put me at 2.7 million units. 3.2 million units lost, right? I'm going to get half of that back, which is going to basically mean I'm going to take over 1 million units lost when it's all said and done if I get zeroed, even if I pull all my troops off base. Now, I could probably grab a couple more troops if I were to set my marches a certain way to try to increase troop capacity. I could probably bump that up a little bit higher, grab a couple 100,000 more troops. It's still too many troops. I'm going to get, if I am up against someone who can zero me, I'm done for because I can't empty the troops off my base. Well, that depends on how you do things. To start with, if I'm taking a rally and I have too many troops on my base to empty it and not overfill my garage, then I'm going to actually take the hit on my base. So hopefully you have a strong enough garrison for that. And the reason we're going to do that, let me pull up. Oh, cool. I got an update reward. Let's go to, let's see, Rodolfo. No. Yeah. No, that's not a good example. And we can use an old battle report. That's not really going to matter. Okay. This is where an old report, but it's where someone from 5033 rallied my base. And you'll see my total unit count was 6.4 million troops. My seriously damaged during that rally was 783,000. My lightly damaged was 169,000. So if I'm looking, all the damaged are going to be seriously damaged and lightly damaged added together. And you'll see that lightly damaged was about double what seriously damaged was. So 1/3 seriously damaged to 2/3 lightly damaged. You're going to find this is a recurring theme in rallies and garrisons. Let me find another one. No, that's not good. No. Okay, that one's pretty good. So we see in this garrison, if I add the lost units to the seriously damaged, then they took about half seriously damaged and half lightly damaged. If you add the lost units to the seriously damaged. Now that still had garrison guns that were a little bit older. It had an Edwards and a Golden Retriever. The rally was much stronger. So, kind of like a so-so garrison, not very good. And they got half and half. If I keep going, here's another rally on the base. If I were to, lost was 703,000, seriously damaged was 1.4 million, almost 1.5. Lightly damaged was 3.7 million. If I add that all together, then I add the lost units to the seriously damaged. It's about 2 point about 2.2 million were the seriously damaged and 3.7 were the lightly damaged. So the lightly damaged was much less than the seriously damaged. But it wasn't, it was somewhere between half and a third. We find another one. Well, these guys all got rocked. Oh, this might be one. Nope. Okay, here's another one. A garrison got hit. It took about 2/3 were seriously damaged because we're going to add the lost to the seriously damaged, and about 1/3 was lightly damaged, and this was a very weak garrison. So, strong garrisons generally will take 1/3 seriously damaged to 2/3 lightly damaged. Weak garrisons, it's the opposite. It's 2/3 seriously damaged to 1/3 lightly damaged. That's very important to remember. So, oh, we're going to need some help for this. Let's use the endless whiteboard. Okay. So hopefully everybody can still see my screen. All right, we're gonna draw this out for everybody. That's my base. And it just got locked down. You don't have to tell me, I know I'm a fantastic artist. My base is locked down, and I have a rally that is incoming towards the base. My garage capacity is 800,000. My base, we're gonna just for us, we're gonna say it has 6 million troops. So I know that that doesn't look right? But I've got 6 million troops on the base. 800,000 of those can go in the garage. Now, if 800,000 would represent my seriously damaged, right? How many lightly wounded would that be in a rally on my base before my garage is full? If anybody knows, you can put it in the chat. So if the enemy is hitting me, how many of my troops have to go lightly wounded before my garage is full? You all fail. It is 1.6 million, right? One third seriously damaged to two thirds lightly damaged. So if my garage gets full at 800,000, I'm also going to have 1.6 million that are lightly wounded. I'm going to add those numbers together. That gives me 2.4 million. 2.4 million of my 6 million count base has to take damage of some kind, lightly or seriously, before my garage is full.
You did say earlier that it would be better if you saw that rally and you couldn't put all the troops out just to keep them all in, correct?
If I take all the troops out, it's going to weaken my base. But if I put all the troops on my base, my garrison is much stronger, right?
Correct.
But let's look at how we're going to use that to our advantage, because I want to have a strong garrison so that my ratio on seriously damaged versus lightly damaged is better. I want the one third seriously damaged with a strong garrison. I don't want the weak garrison where I'm getting uh, two thirds seriously damaged, right? Or even half. That's not good for me. All right, so I'm gonna draw this up at the top. So we've got 6 million. I know 2.4 million. That's a two. How far down does my health bar go? So remember we have that. Oh, why is it doing that? On the side of my base, I got this health bar during the battle, right? How far down does it go before my garage is full? You got it, Dirk. About one third. So I'm about at this mark right here, right? That's where my garage would start to be full. And that's if I kept all 6 million troops on base. So this is where things get messed up. So pay close attention. Where do lightly wounded troops go?
Back to your queue.
They go off into the cloud. They don't exist. Lightly wounded troops are removed from your base and do not exist again until the battle has ended. Exactly. They go to Never Never Land. So I already know that a lot of these 2.4 million troops, about two thirds of them are going to be in the cloud. Okay. Then I have my garage, right? And that's going to have about 1/3 of the troops in it. And that will happen while the battle is going on, but I cannot repair those troops from my garage until that combat has ended. How many troops could I pull off my base again? Does anybody remember?
Not enough.
You think so? Let's check. Let's check. I've got my 60% March expansion. I just got locked down. What am I doing? Well, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to click on in camp. I'm going to click on number 1 here. Elsa Eva. Number 1 March, I'm going to make that my biggest March I can. I'm going to choose Dorian. And let's choose Ophelia. I just maxed that at 518,000. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go to number 2. I'm going to grab my next biggest March I can make. We'll use, let's say, and Emily's fine to use for it, but I'm going to use Eva because she's level 70. And then I'm going to use another officer. We'll use Jean. 484,500. Oh, Jean's level 70. It's better to use her as primary. I'm going to add probably Chloe. 495,000 in that one. In this one, well, keep in mind, there's a rally started on my base, right? I'm not paying any attention to that. I'm gearing up for this. So Dorothea, she can have extra troops. 470,000. Um, Marjorie's a fast march. Maybe I'll use her. But all I'm doing is I'm just trying to grab maximum capacity for emptying this base. Now, I'm not doing this super effective, but we'll say there's 436,000. And what's another? Oh, that one's a general officer. 470,000. And lastly, we'll just use Catherine with, I don't know, Sophia. 461,000. Okay. I've saved all those. That's all I wanted to do because I was gearing up to empty my base as fast as I can. How fast can I empty my base? Um, I don't remember which one it is. Oh, I must have used the same officer for one of these. That's fine. All right, there's my maximum capacity for officers off of base that I pulled without pulling my main garrison out. I'm going to go to troop count 6.969. So we'll say that was, for our example, we were using 6 million. And on the base, I now have 4.1. So 6.96. I'm going to do the math real quick. Hold on.
Hey, Gray, as you mentioned earlier, when you did this, you say if you can't get enough off your base, might as well take the rally with everything out of the base, correct?
Yes, and I'm showing you why. All right. So I was able to pull off all these units. By the way, while you're taking a rally, you can pull units off of your base. That's the whole point of this. So at any point during this, I can pull 2.869 thousand units. So I can pull 2.8 million units off the base right now. So if I have 2.8 million units that I can pull off the base, and it takes 2.4 million units before my garage is full, I add those together and I get 5.2 million units. So out of my 6 million, if I were to take the hit to this 1/3 mark and then pulled all of my units off of base, it would only leave 800,000 units left on my base. So as the battle is going on, when I reach this point, then I pull the maximum amount of troops off my base, and it's only going to leave about 800,000 units left on my base. Those units, even if I take them as damaged, they're not necessarily all going to be seriously damaged. Some of them are going to be lightly wounded. So I would probably take a loss, and I'm just being realistic, of 600,000 troops. Of those, I'm going to get half back. Total loss, 300,000 units. Does this make sense to everybody? I'm being serious. I want to know if you understand this concept.
The concept, yes. How it affects me personally is totally different.
This is a high troop count base. Oh my God, there's something we never even thought of. Allies garrisoning your base. This totally changes the math. When it's all said and done, they are also taking seriously damaged and lightly wounded. My health bar now is going to look a little different because if my allies are filling my base, and let's say I don't have garrison guns, I had 6 million troops, they add 1 million to it. Now I've got 7 million troops on my base. Where is my health bar going to need to go before my garage is full? A little bit further down, right? Now, is the health bar correct in the game? Is it evenly distributed? Nope, it's not. It's going to look about like that. It'll be about halfway down if people are garrisoning my base. So once my health bar gets about halfway down, that's maybe when my garage is full. That tells me I need to pull all my troops off base, which is going to drop my health somewhere around here. Okay. Now, this is very important because you don't want to hate your teammates. When you pull all those troops off base, don't just pull them off your base. Throw them into shielded bases around you. Throw them into towers is even better that the enemy can't hit. But you want to hide those troops because if they're out in the open, they can get mowed to pieces. So you want to pull all those troops off base as fast as you can, and then as soon as you're pulling it off base, drag it to get into a allied base or tower. Once I've pulled all my troops off base, I need to go back into my base, inside the base, top right corner. I want to kick all my allies out of my base so that they're not taking damage for no reason. Once I've kicked all my allies off base, guess what happens? The combat ends. Once the combat ends, my lightly wounded troops immediately return to base. My garage troops are now available to repair in my base. I'm going to hit at the bottom of the screen, recall. I'm going to get all those troops to go back into my base. I have now taken no losses with 6 million troops on my base and a rally hitting it and defeating it. Very important when you do that, when that combat ends, that you immediately recall your troops and repair that garage. No waiting on the repair. You instantly repair that garage. Because if they try to swarm you right after, you want to make sure that your garage is empty. This is basically cheating, just so you guys know. You guys ready to cheat more? Well, here we go. Here's my base. I've got my 6 million troops on it or more, or what. It doesn't really matter. If you have less, you can definitely do this even way more effectively. They lock my base down. Yay! We're going to kill Gray. They just locked my base down. They are geared up and ready to destroy me. They've got me surrounded. They've got guns pointed at me. They're sending me messages. Really mean things. I have a little secret weapon up here in my base. When I'm inside of it, there's a defense center. That's where I set my garrison officers up. In that defense center, there is a bar. Now, you might have noticed on my base, out of the 24,000 health on that bar, mine says 10. Ta-da! That's your base defense health bar. Whenever your base is attacked and it loses, that health bar starts to burn down from period of usually about 30 minutes or so. You can put that fire out. You can click repair if you want to add more health to it, but I leave mine super, super low. I do it on purpose because if they do defeat my base, it will immediately set my base on fire and I will lose about somewhere between 2, 3 health every second. Once that base defense bar burns to 0, the base puts an 8-hour shield on it automatically from the game immediately. It returns all of your troops to your base immediately. And then it random teleports somewhere on the map. Does that bypass the governor lock? Yes, it does. The governor lock doesn't matter when it auto teleports from the base health burning all the way to 0. So even if I fell asleep in bio, if you lock me down and you're ready to 0 me, you can't do it. You can beat my base one time, and whatever lost I take, if I take loss, I'm gonna I'm gonna get half of that back, and it's gonna protect me. It's gonna put an 8-hour shield on me. It's gonna bypass your governor lock, and I'm gonna be safe. This has saved me in bios before. I fall asleep while I'm playing the game. My base is out there undefended in the middle of the open. They teleport in, they rally it, they beat it. Oh, they had me locked. It auto teleports, puts the 8-hour shield on me. Yeah, I lost a lot of units, but I didn't lose everything.
Gray, if you've only got 10 and you're being hit by a rally, wouldn't that pretty much be instantaneous deportation?
It only starts burning after the battle finishes. And
Oh,
only if you lose the battle. So if the enemy calls off the rally where it's a tie, it doesn't set on fire. Question was, does it override Warmonger? It overrides everything. If your base health gets to 0, it will put a shield on it and random teleport it, and there's nothing that can stop it. All right, so how do I burn that base health down? Um, the easiest way, when you go into bio, put a shield on. And you're going to have those city invaders that come attack your base. They're going to bring the amount of troops that is comparable to be difficult for your base to withstand. That is an individual thing the game does. Set the worst possible garrison officers you can on your base as your garrison officers, and hide as many troops as you can in towers and leave them off your base. The shield will protect you from people hitting you in the bio, but it does not stop the city invaders from hitting you. So even if you're shielded, the city invaders still hit your base. So you leave it like that for the first couple of days, or the first day, you let the city invaders burn your health down for free. Well, what happens if there's no city invaders in your safe zone anymore because you've taken the cities? That's fine. Just go out in the unsafe zone in between the two zones where the cities you're fighting are. Put a shield on, set the worst garrison officers possible. As long as your base is shielded, the city invaders will still attack it and the enemy can't. Um, You don't have to. I know that sometimes we will not take one city in the safe zone, so it continuously makes city invaders, but you don't technically have to do that. You can go ahead and take that city and just go out into the intermediary zone, shield up, and do this. I highly suggest that as your base health starts to get lower, that you are on the game and checking. And as soon as you're putting that fire out right above zero that you don't repair, and that you reset your garrison so it's the strongest possible. Don't be the guy who forgets to set their garrison back. But if the bugs defeat my base, won't that cause my garage to be full? No, it's just like when the ghost rebels attack your base. Like, it doesn't completely fill your garage. It puts a few units in the garage. Most of all the units are lightly wounded. They just return to the base as soon as the combat's over. Yeah, so if you want to make yourself invincible, I mean, at least the most protected you can, you want to use both of these concepts of running a low health base so that it can auto teleport and shield. Now, I want you to know, if you hide all your troops while you're field fighting, this tactic does not work, because as soon as they hit your base, it's going to auto teleport it and return all your troops to your base, and you're back to square one. This low health base, I use this if I can't empty my entire base. If I'm going to be forced to take rallies and hits, then I'm going to use this. Okay, so the question was, can I please explain why health is more important? I'll draw it real quick on the screen for y'all. Can everybody see my whiteboard?
All good.
Okay, let's do some video game equation. So how combat works in video games historically is attack minus defense equals damage damage um let me back that up. That damage is subtracted from your health. So that's NH's new health. Okay, so attack minus defense equals the damage dealt. Health minus that damage equals your new health.
Is that counterattack damage dealt, or is that just stat damage dealt?
This is neither. This is just normal game combat. Any game, not Kiss of War, any video game. The basic formula is this: attack minus defense equals damage dealt to health. Okay, so we have to understand that as our basis for this. It's pretty, it makes sense, right? But we ran into some issues with video games that if my attack, and it's my attack minus my enemy's defense, is going to be the damage to their health. Well, that means if their defense is 200 and my attack is 100, How much damage do I deal? 0. So video games quickly had an issue where this equation was not going to work because there were abilities to make yourself God. The higher you could make your defense, the more likely it was you would take no damage. I'm sure people have played video games before where this was pretty much the case. Usually older games. So they had to come up with a new equation. And every video game has a different proprietary equation for how damage is dealt in their game. And it's usually using some kind of a division formula, but it would look something really like weird. Like this, where it's attack multiplied by something divided by the defense equals, there's a division to it. It's not going to be straight up attack minus defense. And they do that so that no matter what, even if your attack is low, you're still dealing some kind of damage to the enemy. So that's the reasoning behind it. However, health remains exactly the same. And typically, attack minus defense equals damage dealt minus damage received equals total damage that is subtracted from health. Okay? That's Kiss of War. Now, the attack minus defense, this is done using a division formula that we do not have access to. And if I did, I would not be allowed to share it with you or I would get sued. Definitely banned from the game. However, damage dealt, then damage received, and then health. Typically, in the formula, left to right goes least important to most important. So I'm gonna put some stuff on the screen. Attack, least important. Next, defense. That's going to be the next most important. That's more important than attack. More important than that is damage dealt. More important than that is damage received. Next, and this is weird, health. And then the last one, which we don't see a lot of in the game, but used to be very important, healing. So we start with the attack goes against the defense. That comes up with the damage number. That damage number is then multiplied by the damage dealt. That damage dealt is then subtracted from the enemy's damage received. That then comes up with a total damage that is subtracted from the enemy's health. After that, at some point, there could be some healing, which typically is a skill, so it doesn't happen all the time. But healing would technically be even more important than health.
That's like Natalia's healing properties.
Yeah, and I think anybody who's played the game for years and years and years remembers that when Natalia first came out, it was the most broken thing in the game ever. You guys think the tank destroyer officers that came out were broken? Natalia, you couldn't earn badges. You had to buy them, okay? There were no badge boxes you got every day. And if you had Natalia Max with Catherine, you were God. Nobody could touch you. Your base, I mean, your march never died. It just constantly healed. There was nothing that could touch it. You saw it in the first bios as newer players when you were going into bios, if you had access to Natalia, and there were no other newer officers available. And Natalia's healing is so broken, you see that everybody still has to use it for Gorgon. Now, at the same time that the healing is broken on Natalia, at a certain point, Natalia's stats were so low compared to every other officer that she was taking so much damage that her healing became detrimental for base defense because all those lightly wounded were put back on base instead of staying off the base, which meant that it wasn't helping any because the stats were too low to do much damage and we're still taking huge amounts of damage. So it was actually filling your garage up faster than if you were running a different officer. So Natalia used to be broken in a good way. Now she's broken in a bad way. You would never want to use Natalia as your base garrison because you will in one battle take way more losses with Natalia than if you're running a different officer. Anyways, so that's why, attack, defense, damage dealt, damage received, health, and then healing. There's no way to really increase the healing that much. The little bits they have in the officer talents are, negligent. Um, it's helpful, but not really that helpful. Um, but that's why, a lot of people focus on the attack, but the attack is nowhere, just historically in video games, is nowhere near as important as defense, and health is even more important than that. Um, and we talked earlier about damage dealt versus damage received, and I'll just kind of remind you. All right, I deal 100 damage to you, you deal 100 damage to me. You are going to get plus 10% damage dealt. You now deal 110 damage. I am going to get minus 10% damage received. 10% of 110 equals 11. So I'm minus 11 from your, oh, I'm minus 11 from your 110. You now deal 99 damage to me. But I'm still dealing 100 damage to you. I didn't increase the amount of damage. I just decreased the amount of damage you were dealing. And everybody should remember from the equation, damage dealt is figured out before damage received. So whatever is calculated first is usually the least important in the equation. Okay. Question about how troops affect that. All right. If your stats, and we're just going to use 200% attack. All right. So I've got 200% attack. I've got 200% defense on my march. How many units are in the march? Now, it doesn't matter if it's on the base. It doesn't matter if it's out in the field. So we're going to say I have a 300,000 unit march. If I had an apple and I increased that apple by 200%, how many apples do I have? I'd have two apples. So 200% of anything is double. So if I have 200% attack, it's going to be 2 times the amount of units. If I have 300,000 units, that is my attack. That is also my defense. That's why we want to leave our troops on the base and make our garrisons as many units as possible, because it increases our attack, it increases our defense, and it increases our health. That's why when you fight with a single unit on the field, you typically want to use a March expansion, because it increases all of your stats, your attack, your defense, your health, the skill damage. It's all increased by the amount of units in that March. Ah, no. First is not necessarily troop count as far as importance. So the troop count is going to affect not just the attack, but the defense as well. It's also going to affect the health. So it's affecting all numbers. So troop count is more important than any of those numbers, because they're all multiplied by the amount of troops. For example, if I have my March is 461,000 when I use a 60% March expansion, let's say that somebody not using a March expansion, let's say it's 300,000. So because if the stats were the same for attack and defense and health, obviously the 461,000 is way more important. But let's say that this person has uh, a 300% attack, defense, and health. And we're going to say that mine is 250% attack, defense, and health. We multiply that together. What we're going to do is we're going to move the decimal point over, so that they are multiplying by 3. We are multiplying by 2.5. 300,000 times 3 equals 900,000. 461,000 times 2.5 equals 1,152. It's way easier for me to increase my capacity than it, with a March expansion by a very large number, than it is to get a base skin or increase an attack, defense, and health. Because that troop capacity is going to give me a monstrous boost. That even if I was 50% less on attack, defense, and health, by using the March expansion, I'm now stronger than their attack, defense, and health. Does that make sense? All right. Guys, Thank y'all so much for joining. Sorry about the issues with the screen sharing. This is a very new thing, this channel for me, so I'm going to work with Julian to see if we can kind of tweak some stuff over the next week to get that working better. If you find value in this, saying something in the Discord, dropping a message, an at Julian, um, and or me, to say that, you're finding value in it. This greatly helps. Just because of your feedback, they were able to make a channel that that people were able to join this specifically for streaming for this. I would say that if people expressed a lot of interest in things such as maybe giveaways, that would be something that we could possibly do in these calls, which would give you a really good chance of winning, because this isn't like thousands of people you're going against when you join the calls. Also, if you like what we're doing here, server 371, I'm the governor of there. So if you're looking for a server to join, feel free to check us out. You can send me a private message. We're definitely a teaching and growing server in tier 4. Would love to talk to you guys about that. Thanks for joining this week. Enjoy your weekend and good luck with Raiders. Real quick, if you somebody said that they wanted to see the ones that they've missed, the last 3 have actually been recorded and submitted to Kiss of War, so those will be uploaded, here in like a week or 2, hopefully, where everybody has access to them.